So control coordination we are doing. Yes, ma'am. Okay, reproduction we haven't started here. Okay, ma'am. So did you all do this diagram? I was thinking that I had started this chapter here. So did you do this diagram?
Yes, ma'am.
Achha, not a problem. You may now if you have drawn this diagram and the previous one also, Clara also that I asked you to do. Then you leave 3 to 4 pages. Leave. Those of you had done the diagrams now. Leave 3 to 4 pages when we do questions. So accordingly, you may write in those pages. Now, what was it? Parts of the brain. Okay, here we had been talking about forebrain, right? We were talking about forebrain. Nervous coordination we completed, right? Yes or no? No?
It was hypothalamus the last hypothalamus.
Nervous coordination we haven't finished. Nervous coordination means transmission of impulse we haven't finished. We have finished. Parts of the brain I have moved on, meaning that topic is finished. So what did we finish here? Control coordination is, we have finished with parts of the neuron. Check. Acha, who all said that you have this chapter for your exam now next? You all. When is your exam?
17 also. And we have the whole syllabus.
Acha, you have the whole syllabus, meaning reproduction also.
Yes, ma'am.
But that is also not done. We haven't finished that chapter, no? So, you also 17th, 19th September. So before 19th September, do we have a class? One more class hai? I think one more hai. Before 19th, we'll have one more Monday, no? So if you want to finish, go ahead with this chapter a little bit more, because if today we go ahead a little bit more, then on Monday we can definitely finish this chapter, because 18th के पहले 17th के पहले एक और Monday आ रहा है. So now the choice is yours. आज 2 घंटा बायो करेंगे तो ये चैप्टर खत्म होगा, नहीं तो नेक्स्ट मंडे तक भी we will be only with done with chemical coordination खत्म होके hormones. अभी hormones बहुत है, animal hormones, plant hormones. If you are willing, 2 घंटा बायो पढ़ेंगे, then I will tell Meena ma'am, then we will finish half of it, more than half of it today, and थोड़ा सा जो plant hormones रहेगा, जो भी बाकी रहेगा, then we can finish. तो ये chapter तुम्हारे exam के पहले हो जा रहा है, decide करो. 2 घंटे के बाद रुकोगे, मुझे प्रॉब्लम नहीं है. 2 घंटे के बाद if you are staying for 1 more hour, MBPS होगा, that will be there. मैथ्स का क्या सिचुएशन है? कितना पोर्शन बाकी है? फुल चैप्टर बाकी है. अच्छा, हाँ, 7 चैप्टर बाकी. ना फॉर द टेस्ट अभी तुम्हारे, बिकॉज यू आर डिमांडेड, हाँ, 1 चैप्टर बचा है. सो क्या करना है? करना है बायो 2 घंटा की. सी वेरी क्लियर, बायो अगर अभी सी ऑलरेडी वी आर 10 मिनट्स गॉन. बायो अगर अभी हम 45 मिनट्स करेंगे तो एट द मोस्ट मैं हार्मोन्स तक आई कैन एक्सप्लेन हो जाएगा. 20 से पहले एक ही मंडे आएगा. वो चैप्टर नहीं है, तो लास्ट चैप्टर भी होगा, वो तो अभी होगा ही नहीं. हाँ, तो वही बोल रही हूँ, if you want control coordination, एटलीस्ट ये चैप्टर को थोड़ा कंप्लीट करके नहीं, और उससे तो आज 2 घंटा थोड़ा डिवोट करो. होगा बॉयज? हाँ, see I'm already, truly speaking I'm already done. Next Monday अगर बोलोगे या एक और हफ्ते उसके बाद बोलोगे I will spare you, biology नहीं होगा, maths 2 घंटे करने दो, because at the last we generally do like this. इस तरह का combinations नहीं करेंगे, then we will not finish on time as per your school demands. तो एक आध घंटे I will leave. नो बायोलॉजी 2 घंटा मैथ्स करो सीधा, तो इस तरह से करना पड़ेगा. आई कॉल मीना मैम, 1 मिनट में डिसाइड करो. आई डोंट वांट टू वेस्ट एनी टाइम.
अबे रहने दो भाई.
एक घंटा भाई
भाई
दो मिनट में डिसाइड करो, then we go ahead. हाँ, how many of you okay? How many of you okay? Control coordination खत्म करना है. हाँ, then you have to go with this pace. I brought Meena ma'am. Decide करो. She also should be well informed. How many of you are okay with 2 hours? हाँ? इसीलिए तो मैं पूछी, तूने बोला उसके बाद. So how many of you are willing to continue with bio till the next period? Then we are done with the chapter the next Monday. आज तो वैसे भी खत्म नहीं होगा. If I speed, see I can speed up 1 घंटे में मैं तो खत्म कर सकती हूँ. तुम लोग समझोगे कितना? That's the question ना. So to make it feasible, आज अगर करेंगे then खाली थोड़ा सा बचा रहेगा. Next Monday करेंगे. उसके बाद वाला Monday if you want bio नहीं रखेंगे. 2 घंटे मैथ्स करो. चलेगा? No.
मैंने उससे पूछा है कि हफ्ते में 2 लेक्चर रखे तो, बिकॉज मैम फिजिक्स और केमिस्ट्री को हमारा हो नहीं रहा है अभी, क्योंकि उसका सिलेबस कंप्लीट है, तो सिर्फ वेडनेसडे और
हफ्ते में 2 लेक्चर खाली तुम्हारे कहने पे थोड़ी होगा, वो मेरी भी अवेलेबिलिटी होनी चाहिए.
रिक्वेस्ट किया करना.
रिक्वेस्ट तो मैं भी कितना, अभी तो मैं भी तो तुमको रिक्वेस्ट कर रही हूँ, तुम सुन रहे थोड़ी हो.
मैंने अपने ऑप्शन से बात की.
यस,
The last month is always like that. Last month is always like that. You have to be mentally prepared.
ठीक है, राजदीप पे प्रॉब्लम करो मैडम.
Done है? Okay? So be there for biology the next class also. So now we have been talking about what? Parts of the brain. So parts of the brain we have finished with forebrain. Parts of the brain we had finished with forebrain. What are the parts of the forebrain we discussed? Parts of the forebrain that we discussed was yes. What are the parts of the forebrain? So for brain, we had discussed about the forebrain. Keep the diagram of the brain. Refer to the diagram of the brain as we are discussing now. Refer to the diagram of the brain, otherwise you will not be able to identify also the parts in the diagram. All of you refer to that diagram in the volume or the textbook. Refer to the diagram in the volume or the textbook. Now again, let us just revise and then go ahead. We talk about the forebrain. What are the parts of the forebrain? The parts of the forebrain we had already talked about. Cerebrum. What were some of the functions of cerebrum? We had already come across, if you remember, cerebrum made up of halves. Cerebrum has got halves. What are the halves of the cerebrum known as cerebral hemispheres? Then at the same time, we also have come across that the cerebrum is extensively folded. And yes, and it has got spaces in between the folds, and these are known as the grooves. And this extensive packing material, the extensive packing, the nature of the brain, which is very much necessary for the transmission of impulses very effectively, very efficiently. So that is the second thing that we discussed. Apart from that, we have also come across that in the cerebrum, when we look into the arrangement of the neurons, the arrangement of the neurons are extensive, millions of them packed together. Talking about the functions of the cerebrum, we had mentioned 3 functions of cerebrum. Okay, let me all the 3 one after the other. What are the 3 functions, major functions of cerebrum we had studied? The first function of cerebrum is what? Controls all the voluntary actions. Cerebrum always controls all the voluntary actions. What was the next set of functions we had studied? All the different types of sensory perception. So sensory perception means what? The ability to view, vision, the ability of vision, and then smell, and then hearing, and then taste. So all these. So what is the first set of functions we had come across for cerebrum? Cerebrum brings about voluntary actions, variety of voluntary actions that we show. Cerebrum is also necessary for different type of sensory functions. sensory perceptions. And what was the third? Behavioral functions. Cerebrum is also necessary for a large number of behavioral functions that we show. And what would be the behavioral functions? Behavioral functions would be in the form of memory. Behavioral functions would be reasoning. Behavioral functions would be analysis. Behavioral functions would be willpower, etc. All these functions come under the concept of behavioral functions controlled by which part of the brain? The cerebrum. Cerebrum controls all these behavioral functions, the willpower, the memory, the reasoning, the analysis, all these that we all show, and which is absolutely different in each one of us. There's a fine difference in each one of us whenever we talk about this. Why the reason? Why we all differ? Now the sensory functions almost all the same for all of us. Voluntary functions almost all the same for all of us. Where we differ in behavioral functions. Why? The packing arrangement of the neurons is different. Why are we all different in the behavioral functions? Why are we all different in the fastness of analysis and reasoning? Why are we all different in the capacity of retaining? Why are we all different in the capacity of immediately, promptly answering or etc. Analysis? Is all because of the arrangement of the neurons, which is a little bit different in each one of us. So that is about cerebrum, a part of the forebrain. What else you have to study? The second part of the forebrain is hypothalamus. The second part of the forebrain is hypothalamus. Did we complete the function of hypothalamus? Check the hypothalamus in the figure. Check hypothalamus in the figure. Is it mentioned? Underline. See that you are able to label the parts very correctly. Hypothalamus. Which part of the brain is known as the hypothalamus? It's a part of the forebrain. Hypothalamus is a part of the forebrain. What is this hypothalamus doing? Two major functions. Number one, two major functions of hypothalamus. Number one is regulates body temperature. Two major functions. Regulates body temperature. How? Regulates body temperature is a major function of hypothalamus. Hypothalamus is also known as the body's thermostat. Where do we come across this word thermostat? Eating. Where do we come across this word thermostat? Thermostat हमारे घर पे कहाँ पे रहता है? अरे मार डालेंगे जान से. Thermometer. Gas. कौन सा गैस तुम्हारे घर पे यूज? थर्मोस्टेट. एसी में, रेफ्रिजरेटर में थर्मोस्टेट, रेगुलेटिंग टेम्परेचर. अच्छा पढ़ा करो एनसीईआरटी. अपने बाइबल छोड़ के फिर अलग कुछ पढ़ो. Now when we are talking about the concept of thermostat, what is a thermostat? Temperature regulator. उसको बोलते हैं thermostat. So we have any of these devices where the temperature is on its own regulating. तो हमारे बॉडी में temperature on its own regulating हो रहा है कि नहीं हो रहा है? कैसे? When it is very hot, outside temperature. Now that we are already come experience these months of May and June, so hot. Outside temperature was 39, 40, 45 in certain places, 47, 48. तो सबसे बड़ा जो हमारे बॉडी में चेंज हुआ क्या था? What did we go through in the month of May, June? सबसे बड़ा discomfort क्या था? Sweating, perspiration. So whenever the outside temperature is very high, what is this hypothalamus doing? Increase the blood supply, bring about sweating. तो ये sweating क्यों हो रहा है? Because outside temperature 45 है, 39 है, higher than our body temperature, but फिर भी हमारा body temperature is still 37. Why? Because in that process of making sweat, the body heat is getting lost. तो body temperature बढ़ने का चांस नहीं देता है hypothalamus. अगर ये sweating नहीं होता, then हमारा body temperature. Now that see, suppose I talk about the fishes. Do the fishes and the frogs they sweat? They don't sweat. So जब बाहर का temperature ज़्यादा है, उनका body temperature भी ज़्यादा हो गया. बाहर का temperature कम है, उनकी body temperature भी कम हो जाता है. But why not for us? Because for us, when the outside temperature is very high, we start sweating profusely. So the body heat is getting lost in making that sweat. So there is no chance body temperature rise होने का chance ही नहीं है. Again, when the outside temperature is very low, outside temperature is 12 degrees, 20 degrees, 8 degrees, 9 degrees. At that time, what happens? What is the most important change that our body brought about by hypothalamus? What is it? The skin starts drying and we start shivering and chattering and all these changes. That is the reason the body temperature is trying to, बाहर का temperature 8 degree है, but still the body heat is trying to make maintain a level. How? By increasing the muscular contractions. By increasing enough of muscular contractions, by bringing about enough of vigorous muscular activity, so that body temperature does not fall along with the outside temperature. Otherwise, हमारा body temperature भी 8 degree, 12 degree हो सकता था, like the fishes and the frogs. So we have specialized features in our body, a specialized part of the brain known as hypothalamus. Now you should have asked me this question. Then what about the frogs and the fishes? Don't they have the hypothalamus? They have, but not that specialized. It is not very developed like ours. That's the reason this organ, even though it is present in those lower vertebrates, cannot bring about this function so effectively as it can bring about in our body. Yes.
So ma'am, what would happen if the body temperature rises too much?
That's the reason they go for hibernation and estivation. क्या हम hibernation and estivation चाहते हैं? No, we only go for vacation and holidays. So we don't go for hibernation and estivation. But they go for hibernation and estivation. Absolutely body temperature becoming low or very high, and which is not suitable for their body functions. So at that time, what's happening when the outside temperature is so high or very low, their body function starts slowing down. So they are almost like dead. They are just hiding down somewhere, resting down somewhere, and they are almost dead. Now, when we are talking about this, remember what does this concept of regulating body temperature mean? If there is any other related question to this, every time you may not be asked to just write down the function, which has something in a twisted way, so you know now what to write. What is the other function of the hypothalamus? Other function of the hypothalamus is to maintain the biological rhythms. Maintain the biological rhythm. What is the meaning of maintaining biological rhythms? Here, whenever we are talking about the cycle of sleep and whenever we are exhausted, we sleep. And after a particular period of hours, when the body has already relaxed, the body has gained its, the muscles have gained energy, etc., we wake up. After a particular period of time, we feel hungry, we eat food. When we are eating food, we have a sense of fullness. But again, after 4 or 5 hours, we start feeling hungry. So this is, everything is a cycle. I talk about sleep or wakefulness. I talk about hunger and thirst, all in a cycle. So this is what is known as biological rhythm. So what is the second function you are writing? Controls the biological rhythms. Controls the biological rhythms. What are biological rhythms? Biological rhythms like sleep and wakefulness. Biological rhythms like sleep and wakefulness. And next is hunger, thirst. Sleep and wakefulness and hunger and thirst. So certain examples like this to remember. So what are we talking about? We are understanding that when we are talking about the concept of hypothalamus, the concept of hypothalamus is something like this. That hypothalamus has got variety of functions to play, and these are some major functions of the body. Next part of the brain. What is the next part of the brain? The midbrain. The midbrain we will not study in detail. The midbrain is not there in your portion. But just the labeling in case you are asked. Look into the diagram. Midbrain is mentioned. Look into the diagram. Is the midbrain mentioned? Underline that. Only the labeling is asked. Functions of the midbrain and all these things are not asked at all in the exam. Details of the midbrain you don't need. Next is we talk about the hindbrain. What are the parts of the hindbrain? The last region of the brain. What are the parts of the hindbrain? We talk about the first part, cerebellum. We talk about the first part, cerebellum. The second is the pons varolii. And the third is the medulla oblongata. So now we are talking about the basic three regions of the hindbrain. Which are the basic three regions of the hindbrain? The basic three regions are the cerebellum, the pons varolii, and the medulla oblongata. सबसे पहले underline all these three in the diagram. Underline these parts in the diagram. See that? You are able to identify them correctly. Now we try understanding. Now for these three parts, nothing much about the structure we will study. We will have to remember the functions. What are the functions? Now that we talk about the first part, cerebellum, look into the structure of the cerebellum. The cerebellum is the second largest region of the brain. What are some features, functions to remember? Then which is the largest part of the brain? Cerebrum. Cerebellum is the second largest part of the brain. That is one feature always to remember. What is one similarity of the cerebrum with the cerebellum? Check the diagram. Is the cerebellum also folded? Yes. The cerebellum is also in the form of some folds and curves and almost in the shape of a leaf. Where is it? The cerebellum is here. Exactly at this region. Just where the skull gets over. The cerebellum is at this region in the shape of a broad leaf-like structure, extensively folded. Now, this cerebellum that we are talking about, yes, this also has got folds and grooves. But now, when we are talking about the cerebellum, what is its major function? The major function of the cerebellum is, that you have to remember is, controls the muscular coordination. Controls muscular coordination. So that is one function always to write. Controls muscular coordination. Now what is the meaning of muscular coordination? Coordination means what? Coordination का मतलब क्या है? We had started with the chapter nervous coordination. Coordination means one tissue working with the other, if I put it this way. One tissue is working with the other. When one tissue is working, the other tissue is not at a stop. That is also working. तो क्या हमारे बॉडी में ऐसे होता है कि 2-3 parts of our body working together? कि एक part work करके rest लेता है, then the other part works simultaneously, no? So when I talk about, now that you are writing, are you able to move your hand? Other hand, the left hand? Yes. Now that you are writing, are you able to talk? Yes. Now that you are writing with your right hand, are you able to move your left leg? Yes. Now that you are cycling, are you able to still move your hands? Yes. So if you think like this, there are so many examples all throughout the day where 3-4 parts of our body constantly moving in coordination. So 3-4 parts of our body coordinates with each other. Which part of the brain giving the signals every time? And that is the cerebellum. What is the function? The function of the cerebellum always is control muscular coordination. Remember what you understand by this. Different parts of the body coordinating with each other. Different parts of the body working together. Muscular coordination. What is the second function? Second function is maintains body balance. Maintains body balance. Now what are the two types of body balance? Body balance दो तरह के होते हैं. Now that you are sitting, you are able to hold your body. इसको बोलते हैं static balance. But now that I am walking, and even when we are running, फिर भी we are able to hold our body. जैसे ही हम भागने लगते हैं, we don't fall down. We are able to hold our body. Whenever we are doing any other type of sport, game, whenever we are able to hold our body, we don't fall down. उसको बोलेंगे dynamic balance. वैसे तो the concept of static and dynamic balance is because of the fluid in the ear. But वो process को कौन सा part of the brain regulate करता है? That is the cerebellum. So that's why we are writing straight away. What is the other function of cerebellum? Maintaining body balance. तो दो function क्या लिखना है cerebellum? Cerebellum one is maintaining body balance. Second is bringing about muscular coordination. आया समझ में? Two major functions of cerebellum. Differences between cerebrum and cerebellum are major question in your paper. काफी common है. Parts and some case study and some questions are always there. Pons varoli. Now what is it? Look for the pons varoli. Just after the cerebellum, there is a small lobe just structure, and that lobe structure is known as the pons varoli. What is this pons varoli doing? It's a small lobe structure, I would say mass of neurons. It is lobed in nature. Lobed always means mass of neurons it is. But what is its function? What is this pons varoli doing? It regulates, majorly it regulates the rate of breathing, regulates the rate of breathing or respiration. तो regulates rate of breathing. Rate of breathing कैसे कब regulate होता है? Rate of breathing, I would say majorly if we would breathe 18 to 24 times per minute. 18 to 24 times per minute. Now, does the breathing rate always remain this? तो कब कम होगा? कब कम हो सकता है? When will the breathing rate come down? Whenever we are sick. Whenever a person must have gone through a major accident, some major infection, so breathing rate becomes very slow. And high कब होगा? Exercise है, running है, stress है, anxiety है. So this is constantly going on in our body. At times bit normal, at times bit high, and if it is a diseased condition, low. Which part of the brain regulates pons varoli? This is one function which is mentioned in your book. वैसे तो pons varoli के और भी बहुत सारे functions हैं. It regulates functions between the cerebellum and many things. So ये एक one specific function that you will have to remember. Look for the medulla now. Medulla is just the start of the spinal cord. Medulla now that we talk about is the just start of the spinal cord. Now medulla oblongata, the full name. Medulla oblongata. What type of a function does it perform? Now medulla oblongata, now to also understand, this is also known as the brain stem. It is also known as brain stem. Why is it known as brain stem? Because it is almost in the structure of a rod, almost in the arrangement of a rod-like structure. And this is the start of the spinal cord. Check the diagram. So now that we are talking about the spinal cord, learn all this proper labeling, so not to make a mistake at all in the labelings when you are asked. So this medulla that we are talking about as the brain stem, then what is the function? The function of the medulla is controls all involuntary actions of the body. Controls all the different involuntary functions of the body. Can you name two regular involuntary functions of our body? Heartbeat, breathing movements, blinking of the eyes, yes, that is voluntary and involuntary both. Contraction of the stomach wall, contraction of the intestinal wall, peristalsis that we have studied. All this is involuntary. Now you get a question that whenever there is an injury, a person goes to an accident and there is a massive injury that he suffers from in the medulla oblongata, what will happen to this person? The person will collapse within few minutes. Give reason. Why will the person collapse within few minutes? Check the function. Because the function of medulla is to control the involuntary functions, all the involuntary functions. So can you give me a reason, a justified reason that the person is suffering from damage in the medulla? Then why is this person collapsing? There is a damage in the medulla. Why is the person collapsing?
Because medulla controls the involuntary functions.
So
Involuntary function, the heartbeat.
The first thing is the heartbeat stops. So as the heartbeat stops, the regulation of the other functions of the body slows down. So if the person is massively, or if there is a massive injury at the medulla, what happens? The first thing is the heartbeat slows down and on the verge of getting stopped. This will bring about a slowdown in the blood flow, improper function of the stomach, intestine, lungs, and every organ. Right, the heart now when it stops functioning, all the other vital organs slowly will stop. The vital important functions of the body all stop. So within half an hour or 1 hour, definitely the person will collapse. But why can't this person be saved? Can this person be saved even if it is detected that the person has a massive injury in the spinal cord or the medulla? Can this person be saved? No, because nerve, no transplant can be done, no surgery can be done, nothing can be done. Had this been with the liver or the bone or the muscle, the person would have been immediately saved. But since it is with the nerves, and you already know the nerve cells never undergo the process of division and repair. Why? Because they have a nucleus which is not functional. That's the first thing I told you when we started with the structure of the neuron. This part is clear. Parts, functions of the brain. So what are the major parts of the brain that you have to study? Cerebrum, hypothalamus, cerebellum, pons varolii, and medulla. 5 parts majorly to study now. Next is with reference to spinal cord. The other day, did we do reflex action? Did we complete that part? Reflex action check. Reflex action did we complete? Now with reference to the nerve impulse conduction, now again let me just revise one more time. Now that I talk about the medulla, what is the next portion? After medulla, what is the next part? After medulla, the next part is the spinal cord. Now you look back into the next diagram, the section of the spinal cord which also explains the reflex. Look into the next diagram. Look into the next diagram, reflexes. Look into the previous, reflex. So now when I talk about the reflex, look into the diagram there, and this diagram, the first part, you get to see the hand, and remember this is the section of the, just give me a minute. This is the section of the spinal cord. A similar diagram I had drawn the other day. This is the section of the spinal cord. Now let us again go through this, answer my questions. Look into the diagram properly. The section of the spinal cord. Look at it properly. Did you all understand what we discussed the other day? The section of the spinal cord here, the parts not much to understand but the neurons. So now if I talk about that with reference to the spinal cord, now if I talk about with reference to the spinal cord, what were some major parts to understand? Some major parts to understand. Here I would talk about that there is a H-shaped structure. And what is this H-shaped structure? This is actually the section of the spinal cord that we are talking about. Keep looking at the diagram and keep telling me that the neuron which will enter the spinal cord is from which part of the body? The neuron that enters from the spinal cord is from which part of the body? What is the name of the neuron that I am drawing here right now?
Sensory neuron.
Sensory neuron. What will be the job of this sensory neuron?
Carry the impulse from the receptor to the spinal cord.
What is the job of the sensory neuron? Carry the impulses, information from a receptor to the spinal cord. Next, when I understand that there is one more neuron here, and this particular neuron will generally carry the messages back from the spinal cord and deliver it where it will deliver it into the other specific gland. Now that other specific glands can be an effector. Now, what is the name of this particular neuron? Now, if I talk about this particular neuron, what will we name this as? Motor neuron. Then what is the difference? Function of the motor neuron would be Carrying impulses from the spinal cord towards the effector. Now here the name is receptor. Give me one example of a receptor.
Muscles.
Skin. One example of a receptor, skin. One more. Receptor. One more. What are some examples of receptor here I can mention? I want to understand one particular pathway. I talk about the eye as a receptor. Then what is this sensory neuron carrying?
Light. Information or light.
The sensory neuron is carrying some impulses in the form of light waves. Information of light waves. In between the sensory and motor, I had mentioned one more neuron. What was it?
Relay.
This type of neurons are short, and if you remember, I already mentioned that these type of neurons are known as association or relay neurons. This diagram that is there in your textbook also very clear to remember. I again label these parts. What are these neurons known as? Motor neuron. And what are these neurons known as? Sensory neuron. And the function of all these very clear to remember. We will wind up with one specific example here. If instead of the eye, I write here, what is the sensory neuron carrying? Sound waves. Later, the sound waves are carried by the motor neuron. These impulses are carried, not the sound waves now, because the messages are already modified here. And now the impulses are carried back to the effector. Which part of the body can be an effector? It can be either a muscle or a gland. And now that the message has reached the effector, how will the muscle or the gland react? What was that answer? I think we had written one answer. That what happens when the information is carried by the motor neuron? Just listen to me very carefully. I had picked up one example of the ear. This neurons of the ear received what? Sound waves. And now these sound waves are moving. Now these sound waves are moving where? Towards the spinal cord. Now these sound waves move towards the spinal cord, get modified at this region. There is a modification of impulse going on at this region. बाहर जाएगा कि वो कोने में जाएगा? You have to decide. Don't act too smart in the class. You have a very high perception about yourself. Get to that corner of the class. Get up. Why do you, when I had moved you out from you, I had moved him out. So that you should give you an idea, no, that ma'am is getting disturbed because she moved him out from me. That means I am somewhere very disturbing in the class. That much of intelligence you don't have. Now, when we are talking about this, again, any type of an example you get in the paper, you are always to write. What is the function of the receptor? Neurons in the receptor will always receive the stimulus. Whatever example, sound, light, etc. Then the messages go to the spinal cord. Now in the spinal cord, what will happen? The messages are getting modified. Then come back or come out by the way of the motor neuron. Which way? Rich and effector. What can be an example of an effector? Can I say the ear, can the ear be an effector again? Can the ear be an effector again? The effector is majorly a muscle or a gland. The ear cannot be an effector. The ear is receiving the messages, and after receiving the messages, it will put the messages to certain part of the body where the response will be shown. The ear cannot show any response. No, the ear can only receive messages. Clear hai? Then what are you understanding? The ear receives messages. Can you now tell me one part of the body which can act as an effector now? Give an example. Give an example that the ear has received messages and one part of the body is now acting as an effector. So effector kaise yaad rakhenge? What is an effector? Effector should always show a response. So after receiving sound waves, which part of the body can show response? Muscles of the hand, muscles of the leg, muscles of the hand, you are writing or you are running or you are walking, or you hear the call from somebody and then you turn back, muscles of the neck, muscles of the face. So muscles of different parts of the body can act as an effector. That is for ear. But eye, hair, nose, hair, all these are also receptors. No. So when these parts are receiving messages, can I say a part of our body which is a gland kisko bolenge? Any part of the body which starts secreting something. So now can you frame one example to tell me that this is one pathway? So I'm talking about any part. Maybe now I talk about the eyes receiving some specific strong light rays, light waves, both strong hair, and certain secretions in the eye starts happening. Glands. Nose, we hear something, we smell something very strong, and secretion of tears, secretion of nasal secretions. So ये सारे examples you have to correlate like this. Receptor and effector, what type of examples to write down? Reflex arc क्या था? What was reflex arc? This is a basic concept of reflex action. You all remember, no? हाँ तो define कैसे करेंगे? What is the definition of reflex arc? It is the नहीं, वो तो reflex action है. Define the reflex action. What is reflex action? An involuntary and immediate response that we show towards a sudden stimulus. तो अगर ये reflex action है, तो reflex arc क्या है? यही है shortest pathway of reflex action. ये जो diagram हमने draw किया, this is of reflex action. So what is a reflex arc? The thinking process of the brain is not involved, and the shortest pathway of nerve impulse conduction. Are you clear about the difference between reflex action and reflex arc? Reflex arc एक pathway है. Reflex action एक process है. So ये हो गया nervous coordination. That's the first part of the chapter over. What is the next part of the chapter? You have to study about chemical coordination now. So chemical coordination में you have to come across different type of hormones, animals and plants, and their functions. Okay. So that is the next part of the chapter. Chemical coordination, different types of hormones. These are all the plants and also the animal hormones and their functions. Major 5 hormones are there that you have to study. Okay, take a break, and after the break again we will continue.
अरे सच्ची में साइंस है सेकंड डिफरेंस हो रहा है.
अरे मार्केट अरे ये बोल रहे मार्केट का प्राइस बढ़ा है.
मार्केट डिफरेंस हो रहा है.
ये बोल रहे गेम रिसेट हो रहा है.
अबे नेक्स्ट मंथ का आ गया रिवॉर्ड्स का चैप्टर का फोटो भी आ गया.
इसके
एकदम एक आपको रिसेट होगा.
देखो डॉक्यूमेंट ये
अरे यार ये
जान बैठना हाँ मैं देखा पक्का देख के आया वहां से भी. क्या क्या
राजीव
क्या
राजीव
कॉर्डो से 90 आइकॉन के ओए आइकॉन का खोल के एक रॉकेट कॉर्डो से 90 अरे क्लिक कर लो पूरा आइकॉन क्लिक कर लो
यार वो तो मिलता ही है
अबे 90 रैंक
हाँ, मिलता है मुझे पता है
भाई योर स्टैट्स दे
बस मुझे लेने की जरूरत है चाहिए
इसकी स्टैट्स दे
तो इसके फॉर्मेशन में हैशटैग
है मेरे को मेरे इसके लिए
राजीव
नहीं
मारना